Hello and welcome to China Focus. I'm Shelley Zhang. Now, since Xi Jinping became head of the Communist Party last year, people have been trying to figure out where he stands on a range of issues. And there have been high hopes that with this new leadership in place, there might finally be some reform, possibly even political reform. But in a recent internal speech, Xi Jinping seems to say that the reason the Soviet Union fell was because Gorbachev tried to reform. Now, that speech we only know about because it was leaked. It wasn't published in official media. What is the significance of that, and what does it mean for China's future? Here today to talk about it, we have China analysts Jason Ma and Chen Zhifei. So, this speech, a lot of people, don't really know about this in China. Is that right?
No.
It's pretty kind of secretive.
Right. I mean, indeed, that's a very, very important kind of meeting, and also what he said over there are very critical to the future development of China. And for example, he mentioned a lot of things. What you just said, people are thinking about political reform, but in his speech, he clearly is saying something like, if we don't think this is necessary reform, we will not reform. And it's totally deviated from
So reforms are not created equal, basically.
Right.
There are bad reforms, there are good reforms. And what the Soviet Union did was bad reform because it led to its demise. And he was trying to draw a lesson from that. And he personally proclaimed that he didn't intend to be the next Gorbachev.
But I think what he's saying over there, for example, regarding reform, people are talking about Wen Jiabao, previous premier, and he clearly saying China need political reform. So that's the core of all the discussion. But he clearly is saying like, we don't think we will reform.
He actually shied away from the usage of the word 100%.
Right.
Because in his first public appearance after announcement of his institution of the top leader of the party, he went to the stage in some kind of museum along with other Politburo Standing Committee members. And he was there and made a speech impromptu, not even mention the word reform one time. Instead, he used a lot the word revitalization of Chinese civilization. So that really was the first message, his signal telegraphed to the national audience. Then this time, I think it was like a surprise for sure. It seems like a departure from his previous position of economic reform and political liberalization, and even sort of about face. It seems like, or two faces, because he made this speech while he was on a tour in the southern province of Guangdong.
It happened at the end of last December. When
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
making that kind of
Outwardly, he
publicized
gave
work.
away he posted a very, open-minded, a very civil kind of liberal image. He went to the site where Deng Xiaoping first initiated reform.
But
He
people were
worshipped
calling
there.
it the new Southern Tour, right? In
Yeah,
terms of like
yeah.
Deng Xiaoping's original
And
Southern Tour.
when he closed the door, he made this kind of remark. That's very disconcerting.
No, I guess sometimes if you look at what he said after he gained the power, sometimes it's consistent. For example, in this talk, he's talking about it. One lesson learned is Soviet Union always criticized their previous leaders, like criticize Lenin, criticize kind of Stalin. And so because they criticize, they don't have any history to rely on, which is called historical nihilism.
Yeah.
And so this is the key. They said because of this, they lost their confidence in our faith. So we should learn a lesson out of this. What he did is pretty consistent. He is the first person in the kind of leader in the past almost 30 years, even consider what the Chinese Communist Party did before the kind of the reform, Deng Xiaoping reform, even the kind of like was the Cultural Revolution. It's something they consider acceptable history.
Yeah. What happened was ahead of the tour in the South, he made a speech. I think that's kind of semi-public
Right.
to the party audience that
But
you
that is
cannot
published.
split up the historical period after party took power. Because as we know, the Cultural Revolution, the Great Forward movement all happened ahead of Cultural Revolution, all happened the first 30 years of the party's rule. And before the reform, like what Jason said, his point was that historical periods, as painful, as bitter as the war, are necessary. are an integral part of the whole history.
So what happens to the whole
the implication is
70% correct?
That's right. So I think that's even more backward. That's even more reactionary in comparison with Deng Xiaoping's remark. That's huge.
So he's actually, you're saying he's like not repudiating Mao at all?
No.
I mean, people was even kind of hope the new leader can really kind of re-evaluate people's action, kind of Communist Party's action during the Liu Si, the Tiananmen Square, and also kind of somewhat kind of get rid of Mao finally from the status.
Take him out of Tiananmen Square.
Yeah. But from what kind of he's doing and saying right now, it seems like it's the chance it can be
from his body language, you
less.
can easily tell he thinks it's better than either Jiang Zemin or Hu Jintao because he's the first princeling who took the top post. You can see that he thinks he's the same status or stature of Mao Zedong or Deng Xiaoping. He will be a savior of the party.
So he does not want to be the Gorbachev of the party.
No.
That came up a lot, that nobody wants to be the Gorbachev.
That's right.
But like, do you think this sheds new light on Xi Jinping's thoughts? I mean, this is an internal speech. It wasn't publicized. Do you think this is more real than what he's been saying in public?
Right. I do believe once you look at what he's talking in this particular speech and then saying what he said before, I begin to realize that he is a consistent person. I mean, we interpret him as a reformer, which is more like we just kind of hope he's a reformer. But it looks like he trying to work a very kind of straight line. On one side, he clearly want to maintain the Communist Party's ruling in China. But on the other side, he clearly realized the current status of Communist Party members' behavior is not make this party sustainable. So what he's doing is trying to get rid of those corrupted officials. The fundamental purpose is still saving the
I agree. It's just same question you just posed. I just want to add on to Jason said. Imagine what would have happened not 30 but 25 years ago when the top leader made this kind of tour and made these kind of remarks, groundbreaking new thoughts. You will see them splashed on the headlines of every newspaper in the country. But this time, they didn't do that because he knew this represents a new strategy, a new kind of a shift in their thoughts. They knew they could not hold on to their dogma. They could not mislead people forever. So they want to put on a facade of open-mindedness. That's why he was waving to the audience, public, when he had a tour. He said a lot of things that people were expecting him to say, like the reform, the what is that, constitutionalism. Remember, we had an episode on that. Yeah, that really ignited people's hope. But
the China dream, right?
Behind the door, behind the scenes, they were talking about stuff like you would imagine you could only hear in North Korea because they would really hold on to the power dearly. I think that's a little shocking.
It seems that like one of the things he said was about why the Soviet Union disintegrated. It says, why did the Soviet Union collapse? Important reason was that their ideals and convictions wavered, and said finally, all it took was one quiet word from Gorbachev to declare the dissolution of the Soviet Communist Party, and a great party was gone. In the end, nobody was man enough.
He called the party great party, and the underlying message was he would go out of his way to man up, to stop this tide, which is unstoppable.
But I think on the other side, I think one thing he just didn't get it, and how can a party disappeared just because of one sentence? It's not the real reason. The real reason is the people in Soviet Union decide to give up that party. And this person saying that sentence is not the reason for Soviet Union has the Communist Party. It's totally because the Soviet people gave up as this party. It's just this person at that moment saying a right word. So he didn't realize that. He think, at that moment, if another guy or three guys stand up saying, I disagree with you, and then Soviets still can have a Communist Party. No, that's totally different. He didn't get it. I mean, right now in China, clearly people are abandoning Communist Party. And he realized that that's the reason he didn't publish it, because right now, publishing this kind of statement is a kind of a disgraceful thing. I mean, people will consider you are kind of a weird guy by saying this, but kind of he's so controversial in this sense. But on one side, he naively thinking if Gorbachev didn't say that sentence, the party was still there. And on the other side, he clearly realized people don't like this kind of statement.
Yeah. To clarify, I think what Jason, my understanding what he was trying to say, which I agree, was he's trying to walk a very delicate tightrope. Trying to manipulate a balance.
So on one hand, it's the party has to rule China.
To please the reform camp, to give them hope, to give us hope.
So basically, it's like if the anti-corruption movement, that's to please the reform camp, and on the other side is the party has to rule China.
The party will tighten up the control. Will be the same as before, and will be just like another North Korea inside. That's the.
Right. I guess, but really, I mean, because he's a princeling. I mean, that's his kind of
the son of a
former revolutionary.
Yeah. So, but I think he considers that's his family or his kind of father's family's country. He wants to maintain kind of that country is controlled by the Communist Party. But I think the message he's sending here is go out of our kind of imagination. We know he's a princeling, but we didn't really realize he's so kind of leftward.
But let's back down a little bit. I think there is another very interesting school of thought about this. That is, well, of course, he's putting on two faces or two masks. And then it's hard to tell right now, only after 3 months of his rule.
Yeah.
Right? 3 months?
Right.
Which is real, which is fake.
Well, that's why I asked if you thought that this was more real.
Exactly. Probably this is only for show. This is because he had a political patronage with the legacies of those 8 immortals who were really conservative, revolutionary era, communist heroes, stalwarts. Who gave him the legitimacy? Who put him on power? Who put him on a pedestal? And he have to do something or say something to please those people. So probably what we are seeing here from his words, he's just trying to please those people.
So you don't think that this is what he really thinks?
Well, we want to give him the benefit of doubt in that regard, if you really want. But then if you go deeper, if you look at a series of actions or incidents that happened after he took power, like what I said just now. He made a speech about the integration of the party history, which partially justified the righteousness or whatever, the necessity of cultural revolution. I think it seems to be that he was not actually doing a tightrope walk. He's actually putting on two faces to mislead people.
But I guess I'm kind of somewhat agree is I still want to look at a particular defining moment because all what he's doing is talking. And I want to find an exactly defining moment where he has to make a decision either to arrest somebody, to persecute somebody because the person against his ideology. At that moment, I will see that's.
So you're looking for Tiananmen Square kind
Jason,
of.
he did tell us in his speech. He was addressing that question. He was answering the call. What I do when that historical moment came? He answered that question. He said I'll be the only man. I'll be the only man to defend. So he made it very clear. And the only question remaining was we don't know whether he would be real. He would, be serious. It only just a show.
But if you are really kind of people with justice kind of a feeling, I mean, at the moment when you choose between your power and people's life, I think just the people should choose people's life instead of his personal power. That's the defining moment I'm talking about. Basically, when there is a moment like that, I want to look at what he's doing. And also, most of the previous Communist Party leader failed that test. Deng Xiaoping has Tiananmen Square kind of massacre, and Jiang Zemin has the persecution of Falun Gong, and Hu Jintao didn't do anything by stopping either of them. So I'm finding his defining moment.
My point is, my take is that moment has arrived. Because you cannot just draw a superficial similarity with the Soviet Union. You cannot just expect the Chinese tanks roll in Tiananmen Square and somebody will go up to the top of the tank and call people up for uprising, as Yeltsin did in 1991, because the extent of chaos, of tumult, of country's moral decline has gone beyond, way beyond what the Soviet Union people experienced in the early 1990s. I think the party it is integrating, that's for sure. Because when Gorbachev announced the death of the Communist Party, no party officials had assets abroad. No party officials sent their sons, daughters to the United States. There was really no such, kind of collapse of not just the dogma, but the practice.
I
Nobody
agree.
was believing or practicing the belief.
Right.
So, and for him to do this, I would say he was just trying to make himself like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. It's impossible for him to do this. Hopefully, he just wants to say this to please some faction of the party to consolidate his power base. Hopefully,
let's just hope.
Let's just hope that his action will tell a different story.
Well, let's go back to this for a second. Do you think that this will, you talk about hope, like a lot of people put a lot of hope in Xi Jinping. Do you think this speech will change the perception of Xi?
Definitely. I mean, I guess that's the reason that they are not publish it. But once this is released by different channel, kind of confirmed by different people, I immediately see the strong disappointing in kind of Chinese people's kind of response, and also I'm seeing kind of a darker future for the China.
That's true. I think it's really a watershed moment, and if you make connection with the Nanzhou South Weekly incident, then it all started to make sense. Why the official at the local propaganda department would take that kind of action? Probably he have taken some cue from the internal circulation of Xi Jinping's speech. So he thought he had did the right thing. He did the right thing. Mm-hmm. So if you think of that, I mean, this definitely would have some significance, some effects in the party's propaganda, in the party's whole thoughts or approach to the ruling of the people.
Okay, well, thank you both for joining us and talking about this today. And thank you for watching. For more on this and other issues in China, join us at ntd.tv.